What just happened out there tonight? Great day of college football again, as the sport does not disappoint. Welcome in, everyone, to the Voice of College Football in our Saturday night wrap-up show that we deliver each and every weekend to wrap up the college football weekend. Taking your comments and questions there in the chat. Please consider your contributions to help us grow and build the channel and keep going here at the Voice of College Football, and to continue to deliver the best discussion, debate, and analysis based on your participation. All right, let's get to the late night scores and then my thoughts and your calls. UCLA leads Stanford. Will there be a miracle tonight for the Cardinal? I guess they're going to wait until it gets to 29-0 against the Bruins, but UCLA leads at Palo Alto. We don't know how many dozens are in the crowd right now. 21-0 Bruins in this one. Arizona State with a quick 7-0 lead on Washington. Whoa, who's playing defense tonight for Arizona State? If they shipped in the 85 Bears, there is less than 2 minutes left in the first half. Michael Penix has reached the scoreboard for all of that. This is why we play the games. Arizona State leads 7-0. No, I'm not predicting that they're going to hang on to that lead, but consider this. We all, or many out there, elevated Michael Penix to near deity status last week, and that Washington offense is unstoppable. It's unstoppable by anybody not named Arizona State, apparently. 7-0, close to halftime. Nevada leads San Diego State 6-0. Actually, that's a final score. I just assumed that was in progress. That is now a final score. How about that? Wolfpack defeat the Aztecs 6-0. That's my favorite score of the day right there. We will not run down the rest of the top 25. You know what happened that was important. The day started with Ohio State notching the biggest win of the day, the most important win, knocking off Penn State. Dominant defensive performance by Ohio State. Michigan capped off the Big Ten day with a 49 thrashing of Sparty. Rutgers picked up its sixth win. 6-2 is Rutgers now after thrashing Indiana. And Minnesota pulled off the upset in the Big Ten today that is shaking up the West. We will have to monitor the Big Ten Western Division. We will have to get our abacuses out to determine what the various possibilities are. Everybody's basically going to finish 4-5 or 5-4, I believe, in the Big Ten Western Division, as PJ Fleck gets his first win against Iowa in 8 tries, as there is a controversial call near the end of the game as Cooper DeJean had taken one to the house via a punt return that was called back, and we will get into that. Check out my instant analysis of Iowa and Minnesota. Went down to the wire, 12-10 Gophers. Texas almost falters. Houston fails on a 4th and 1 inside the 10 to take Texas to possible overtime or go for the game-winning 2-point conversion, but the Longhorns survive 31-24 in what we consider to be a mediocre Big 12. Texas survives. OU survives. How about that game? 31-29 on a failed 2-point conversion at the gun against UCF. A UCF team that has looked lousy in the Big 12, getting skull-dragged by the week by the likes of Baylor and Kansas and others, and they take Oklahoma to the wire. Talk about to the wire. Utah does it again to USC, 34-32 on a last-second field goal as the Utes march in with Bryson Barnes at quarterback and down Caleb Williams. Some statistics were posted by Fox tonight about Caleb Williams' numbers against top 25 ranked defenses. They are not impressive. 6 touchdowns, 6 picks, 51% thrower, 172 yards per game. Tonight in the SEC, Ole Miss wins over Auburn on the Plains 28-21. Key win there. Alabama earlier in the day, mighty impressive in the second half as they came back from being down by 2 scores at halftime, 27 straight for the Tide on the scoreboard to win, pulling away from Joe Milton and company 34-20. The shocker of the night in Chapel Hill is Carolina defeats all these decent and good teams. And then what happens when Virginia comes to town? They march down the field to score the game-winning touchdown, stop Drake May on an interception at the gun, and defeat Carolina. And that is, I understand, the first time a team with at least a 1-5 record or worse this deep into the season has defeated a top 10 team on the road since 1961, when Oklahoma did it against Mizzou. We could go on and on, but we will take your calls and dive right into it with the real MVP getting us started tonight.
Hey, Mark, how you doing this evening?
I am doing well. What's going on, sir?
A lot of great college football happened today, Mark. The Ohio State-Penn State game, a battle of the Titans. Ohio State, to me, looks like they've separated themselves so far in terms of their quality wins in the Big Ten. I know Michigan has dominated people the most, but they haven't played anybody. Sorry. I know UNLV is 6-1 and they're going bowling, so congrats, and so is Rutgers, but they still haven't played nobody. Mark, is Ohio State's defense the best defense in the entire country?
It sure looks like it, doesn't it? I don't know who else is going to do that to Penn State. I know Michigan fans are going to jump on that comment and say that they're going to do that in 2 weeks. We shall see. But my goodness, they're good. I don't know who's better. If it's not Michigan, I think Alabama's in the ballpark. And wow, beyond that, you got me.
Right, and I know statistically Michigan or some other teams might have better defenses. But I would have guessed every team above Ohio State has not played a Notre Dame, a Penn State, or even a Maryland. I would take those three teams right now as far tougher competition than almost anybody else. And Ohio State's got to go to Wisconsin. I thought that was going to be a big game, but Wisconsin doesn't look good, Mark. So Ohio State probably wins, 28-0, something like that. But anyway.
Whoa. We know what happens in college football every week, though.
I said probably. I didn't say definitely.
They got to go to Madison, difficult place to play. I'm sure it's going to be I believe it's going to be a night game. Yeah, that's going to be a night game because Fox went with Kansas and Oklahoma at noon. So I guess Ohio State, Wisconsin is going to be a night game at Wisconsin. That's going to be a tough deal.
Yeah, I just don't think Wisconsin has the horses this year, Mark. I mean, they struggled against Illinois. I said probably. I put it in the 90%.
Ohio State's best effort showing up. I'm talking about them struggling through and Wisconsin bringing their best game next Saturday night.
I guess. I mean, anything is possible. Also, unfortunately for Duke, without Riley Leonard, they just don't have the horses to compete with Florida State. I mean, once he got hurt and was taken out for the game, I figured it was over. They're just not talented enough around him in order for a backup quarterback to come in, Mark.
I was incredibly impressed with Duke, as they have beaten Clemson, should have beat Notre Dame. Now they go on the road because the first two were at home. They go on the road, and they look like the better football team for the first three quarters to me. I was just watching the game, logging the game, got my instant analysis up there, folks, if you want to check it out. And I just think Florida State's deeper. And then when Riley Leonard went out, and I think Duke had a few things go against them. They could have kicked a field goal when Leonard got knocked out of the game. They were inside the 10-yard line, but they went for the gusto, and they went for the fourth down conversion with a rookie quarterback, and he missed a receiver in the end zone on a difficult throw because he was under pressure. I can't come away from that game really thinking that Florida State's that much better than Duke.
I agree with you. Florida State has been getting by against inferior competition. They've been flying closest to the sun. I think they're the best team in their conference, but I think the gap between them and the second best team in their conference is the smallest between the other conferences.
I've got to address this comment by John. And again, everybody join John on Tuesday nights on the Michigan channel and for the post game here at the Voice of College Football over on the Michigan channel. So Tuesday nights, 8 o'clock Eastern time for Michigan football talk with John. 49-0 beating our second biggest rival is legit. Say what you will. The 49-0 part of that is legit. The beating Michigan State is not legit. It's like everyone in the conference is doing that. So that's
Right.
that's
And I
the only
also
thing I'll say
saw,
to that.
Mark, during
But
your
they're on the
instant analysis.
schedule. You got to play them, and Michigan dominated the game. Yes.
I saw comments on your instant analysis video, and I'm seeing them in the chat. Is that just the Ohio State Penn State result? All it proved is neither of them are good. They're just both trash.
I know people are. I'm going to stop. I'm not going to call people morons and idiots tonight. I'm going to try to refrain from doing that. They can just understand that I'm thinking it. But then who's any good? I guess just Michigan's the only good team in the country.
I guess I would say in the top 25 that actually makes sense. Ohio State should be number one because I think they've got the best resume in the country. But
I will certainly be reviewing it, and it certainly went through my mind after that game at some point during the day after all these other games were unfolding. Well, they might have the best resume in the country now.
Right. And Mark, it's about the bigger picture in Ohio State. I understand they want to beat Michigan, but Mark, I would say there's plenty of scenarios where they could lose to Michigan and still make the college football playoff. Would you agree with that?
Sure. Yeah. As long as they lose close and as long as Michigan wins the rest of the games, and it would be better for Ohio State, I guess, at this point. I guess it doesn't truly matter. But if Michigan beats Penn State, I guess in a sense that looks better if Michigan beats Penn State and then Ohio State, let's say, loses 31-28 to Michigan. 6-1, half a dozen the other, because otherwise they've got a win against the Penn State team that beat Michigan. I kind of want, unless Ohio State's going to run the table and win all the games, I kind of want a 11-1, 11-1, 11-1.
I understand that, Mark. I understand that.
Chaos. I want chaos all over the place.
Well, you got some chaos tonight in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Credit to Tony Elliott. Credit to Virginia, Mark. I don't know how much of that game you watched.
Zero.
But I actually watched quite a bit of it because I saw on the bottom was 14-14. Virginia ran all over North Carolina. I mean, you remember that Miami game a few years ago where Miami had, 600 yards, something like that against them?
No. North Carolina had 600 yards against Miami.
Okay. It was similar to that game where they just ran all over them, and they couldn't stop them. They couldn't contain the edge. They looked North Carolina looked out physical. They looked tired. Drake May didn't look good at all. His wide receivers dropped passes. They looked really bad, Mark.
Well, I'm looking at the box score, and I get your point about Virginia, 228 yards rushing. That at 4.2 yards per carry, not quite in the realm of what Carolina did to Miami a few years ago. But I get your point that North Carolina has beaten a lot of decent teams, and now they run up against what is clearly the worst team on their schedule, and they cough it up. Now, this Tez Walker, who was ineligible for most of the season and finally ruled eligible 2 weeks ago, he has certainly proven to be as good as advertised. He had 3 touchdowns last week against Miami and 132 yards, and I see tonight 11 catches for $146 and a touchdown. But otherwise, yeah, North Carolina, I never was a true believer that North Carolina was one of the better teams in the country. So I'm not going to say I'm not going to say that I'm not surprised by this outcome, but yeah, North Carolina is a bit of a pretender.
I agree, Mark. I put them in the same category as Louisville when they were 6-0. I didn't think they were the 14th best team in the country, but I thought that's about where they should have been ranked. Mark, there's a few other games I want to talk to you about. Utah, USC. Is it time for Alex Grinch just to go, Mark? I mean, they can't stop anybody.
Well, I was focused on because of business purposes here, I didn't necessarily select the best games. I selected Michigan State. And then once it got to halftime, there's no reason for me to watch that debacle anymore. So I really checked out USC and UCLA a little bit late, but by the looks of the score, I know that USC had a pick six to get back in that game. Uh, was it really the defense that let them down tonight?
I would argue in the final few possessions when they needed the defense to step up when it was 31-32, and you let Bryson Barnes run for 20 yards to get in field goal range. I mean, that's just unacceptable to me, especially with the way they've been performing all season. Bear Alexander with the late targeting call, just a stupid play, Mark.
Oh, he had a targeting too. I saw down near the goal line, he also body slammed a Utah player after the whistle. That was an unnecessary roughness against him. So he did that too.
Right. The targeting one was on the final drive of the game.
Okay. I missed that.
It's just stupid stuff like that that just tells me they're undisciplined and they're not aligned properly. It looks like half the time they don't know, they have no communication. I don't know what's going on with them.
They are not going to fire their defensive coordinator mid-season.
Okay, I guess you're right, but I mean,
you know what? I guess I shouldn't say that 100% certainty. It's possible. I don't believe they will, as long as they have a shot to get to the Pac-12 championship game. But then again, as of next week, they may not have a shot to get to the Pac-12 championship game. I know some USC detractors have been commenting in recent weeks that this team may lose 4 or 5 games. I thought that was a little heavy-handed, but I certainly didn't go to the extent of our USC hosts who said, there's no way that's ever going to happen. Because I said, well, if we look at the schedule, and now Utah looked like the least dangerous of those teams that USC has to play, and they lose that game at home. They've got to go to Eugene to play Oregon. They've got Washington coming up.
They've got Cal next week, Mark. I mean, they could lose to Cal. They almost lost to Arizona. They almost lost to Colorado.
With all due respect, we had our buddy Matt Zemek, who does just an amazing job on our USC show with me every Monday night. I don't know where he was coming with this on Twitter, whatever we call it now, X, and he posted that after watching Penn State and Ohio State, that USC could handle either one of them. And I was like, what? They can't even handle Arizona.
I've noticed that people just don't appreciate defense, Mark.
Yeah,
if you win 20-12, it's not nearly as impressive if you win 48-41. Yeah. I don't understand it, Mark.
I don't.
But anyway, that's all I got for you tonight. Fight on to every signboard creationist person out there and signal caller.
Good stuff out of DeReal tonight. We've got Andrew jumping on board tonight. Welcome into the Voice of College Football.
Hey, what's up, Mark? How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm well. I really just wanted, DeReal covered so much, but I really just want to shout out again the Virginia Cavaliers, 24-point underdogs, their first program win on the road over a top 10.
If I may finish Andrew's sentence for him, Virginia's first ever road win against the top 10 team. Andrew, you with us? Andrew, if you're able to connect again, please call back. Hello, we'll give you one more shot there. Unfortunately, Andrew disconnected. We'll keep it going here at the Voice of College Football. We got our buddy Michael Hogue on the line. Michael, how you doing?
Good, Mark. Yourself?
I am doing just fine. What is your Purdue offense going to have for Michigan next week?
Next week, I thought that was November 4th.
Oh, did they get a week off?
Yeah, they play Nebraska next week.
Okay, it's Michigan's next game. They must have their bye next week. Okay.
First thing, I want to get your take on the end of the Iowa-Minnesota game.
Okay. Yeah, let's get into this one because this was huge. So, folks, if you missed it, and you probably have caught up on this at this point, Minnesota led Iowa 12-10. They're punting with just about 2 minutes left in the ball game, and Cooper DeJean, one of the more dangerous punt returners in the nation, lets the ball hit near the sideline, and he's motioning with one hand what appeared to me to be like an under the shoulder fair catch signal. He was doing this, but the rules state that you have to motion a fair catch above your shoulder. So he's doing that with his left arm. Meanwhile, with his right arm, he's kind of motioning for his teammates to stay away from the football. Then he goes up and he fields the football on a hop or two, and he makes an incredible run down the sideline first, jukes guys, takes it to the house in what appears to be what could be the game-winning touchdown, and it gets called back for what is I forget the exact term, but
invalid fair catch signal.
No, I don't know that it was the fair catch signal. I'm going to look this up, Michael. You give me your take, and I'm going to look this up because I heard people commenting that it was because he made a fair catch signal, but I read that it had to do with him motioning the getaway signal to his teammates.
I caught the tail end of the game and stuff. What it was is he was motioning, but his left hand got up right by the helmet, right around between the shoulder and the helmet, and that constitutes the fair. And that was constituted. Because see, people was complaining had he got smoked. If they would have smoked him, it would have been a penalty on Minnesota for a personal foul and unnecessary roughness.
True.
So technically, it should have been killed there. But one other thing. How
you're right. I'm reading the ESPN article, and it says a fair catch signal. Okay.
How are you winning? How are you playing football with 127 yards total offense?
Because that's what they do every week, and they're able to get away from it.
And they beat Wisconsin last week.
Well, they're able to get away with it playing in that division. They're not going to be able to do that next season. There's no way they're winning games against Oregon, Washington, Ohio State, etc., with 127 yards of total offense.
But who knows? Maybe there'll be a new regime in Iowa City next year.
There might be. That's if Kirk Ferentz decides to move on.
Well, yeah.
He's not going to get fired.
I don't know if you're going to have much of a choice. But, hey, Mark, I got to tell you this. That Ohio State game today put me to sleep in the third quarter.
You don't like good football? Is that what you're telling me?
It was boring.
Okay.
Defense, I was looking. I thought it could be maybe somewhat of a good game, maybe in the 20s or 30s. No.
Okay, you're equating good football with games in the 20s and 30s, or
yeah, in case you're wondering, I'm an offensive
guy. Okay, I understand that. I thought it was an excellent game.
Well, yeah, for Ohio State. Marvin Harrison.
No, I just thought it was an excellent game.
Yeah.
Next week's game. Those were the two best football teams that have been on one field this season.
Well, what about last week when Washington and Oregon?
I'm going to say that those are the two best football teams that have been on one field this season. I guarantee that there are more NFL players on those two rosters than the Oregon and Washington
I'm not
rosters.
disagreeing. And last thing about Iowa, I'm a diehard Purdue fan. I like Cooper DeJean, and he's going to be playing on Sundays for a long time.
Okay, I kind of missed that comment. Who's going to be playing on Sunday?
Cooper DeJean.
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
But get back to Marvin Harrison Jr. Yeah, he's a good receiver, and I hope that somehow the Colts can get him as a receiver when he comes out, because he'll probably come out after this season.
Yeah.
Or is he a senior?
They already have a banner with his name on it in the stadium, so
yeah,
they don't have to deal with that.
No, they don't. But no, I gotta ask you this though. What was up with Wisconsin and Illinois today, man? That was crazy. There's no way Wisconsin should have won that game.
I couldn't really tell you, except for I know Illinois was up by a couple touchdowns, and then I was surprised to see that Wisconsin came back and won the game, but I did not see any of it. I will hopefully be able to catch up with some of these highlights in the next day or so, but did not get a chance to see that one.
Yeah, like with Alabama and Tennessee. Talk about a tale of two halves. It's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. When is Alabama going to put a complete game together?
Well, that's a good question because they have yet to do so. It's not hurting them at this point, but they will have to be more consistent. They can't trail a college football playoff game or an SEC championship game by 2 scores.
No,
Most
they
likely.
can't. All right, my last thing, because I know you got a lot of people waiting for you and stuff like that. Had Michigan kept your starters in every single game this year, do you think they'd be averaging about 70 points a game?
Probably. Yeah, I could see that.
Then why is it? Yeah, I know the schedule and stuff like that, but how is Ohio State people saying that there's when you're not even seeing a complete game with Michigan yet? You wonder what that's going to be like in 3 weeks when they play Penn State?
Yes, I would imagine that's going to be their first challenge. Yeah, there's 2 ways to look at it. Michigan has been far more dominant than Ohio State, but there's no comparison between the competition. So I'm not going to make a judgment on who the better team is right now, but Ohio State's record is much more credible than Michigan's.
Yeah, because of having the games with ranked games with Notre Dame and Penn State.
Yeah, the best team Michigan has played would be the 4th best team Ohio State's played.
Which would be what, Maryland?
Well, the best team Michigan's played is either Minnesota or Rutgers.
Oh, and Rutgers, congrats to Rutgers for becoming bowl eligible today.
Yes. I
But
love
what
that.
others trying to figure out is how was it Michigan was able to score at will against IU and Ohio State had a tough time with them?
Well, for one thing, you cannot make those direct comparisons because we could be making those all day. You understand? You can't just. I could go all over the country and say, "Well, look at this team." If you're going to make a comparison between Florida State and Holy Cross, they both played Boston College about exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
They both beat them by 2 or 3 points.
Yeah.
So Kyle McCord was playing his first ever game on the road in the Big Ten, and Ohio State called a very conservative game.
Mm-hmm.
He's not even the same player today that he was 2 months ago.
So you think he finally unleashed Ryan Day finally unleashed him, gave him the whole playbook?
No, I heard some people make that comment, and I don't think they watched the game or they really know what they're talking about. I think it's somewhere in between. I think he's giving him more and more and more, but he doesn't totally trust him. If they got the ball with 40 some seconds left in the first half with 2 timeouts at about their own 20, and if that's any other quarterback under Ryan Day, they're trying to score more points, but they just took a knee, went to the locker room. There were other situations. They were in the red zone. They just buckled it down. Once they determined that they got behind the sticks, they went for a field goal. They didn't try to test him. Now, there were other times they took their shots. So it wasn't like they completely didn't trust him, but they didn't cut him loose in any such way.
Yeah, no, I just wondering when it's going to be full board. All right, here we go. Speaking of Ohio State, Trevion Williams most likely done for the season, you think?
Well, there's a thought each week that he's going to come back and play. I don't necessarily think he's as important to this offense as other people do.
I mean, Trevion Henderson. I don't know why I was thinking of why I said Williamson before, but no.
Yeah.
Just wondering. My mistake, Mark. Don't throw me to the wolves about that one.
Won't do that.
All right.
Never.
Get out of here. All right. Thanks, Mark.
You've been too good to me, Michael. Have a good one.
Take care. See ya. Boiler up.
All right. Purdue and Michigan get together in a couple weeks. One thing I will say about Penn State is they should have early in the game. There was one particular drive. I have no idea what was going through. Oh, shoot. I forget the offensive coordinator's name. It's not Kirk Shiraka anymore. Oh, shoot. Can't think of the guy's name. Anyway, the Penn State offensive coordinator, they go for 20 yards. They go for 15 on the ground. So this is the beginning of a drive. Nick Singleton's ripped off 20, 15. What do? throw the next 3 plays. I don't understand that. It's working. Just go with it. It's not. Sometimes they make it too complicated, overthink it, outsmart themselves. All right. We will keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. We got Michigan Man on the line.
Hey, what's up, Mark? I got a lot of things to talk about now. I'll try to get through it as quick as I can.
Okay.
First things first. Any hater can no longer deny that Ohio State has a top defense. They have a top defense, one of the top 3 defenses in the country. I'm not going to deny that. I don't think anyone should deny that.
Michigan, Ohio State. Who else do you like?
I think Penn State's still in that conversation.
Okay. Those 3 are the best defenses in the country. They might be.
Alabama. I put Alabama up there.
Yep.
The thing with Penn State, to me, I mean, Penn State's defense, you got to realize. Well, let me start with this. I will never pick a James Franklin team against Ohio State again because you have a young quarterback in his first real road start, and you did not. You put it on his shoulders more than you really should have.
Yeah.
I don't. It was baffling, man. The 3rd and 1 call was baffling. The drive you just talked about was baffling. The trick pass to the short boundary side of the field was bad. I mean, the 3rd and 5 run, that 3rd and 5. So you run it on 3rd and 5, but you don't run it on 3rd and 1.
And what's stupid about the 3rd and 1 play is you're running pretty well early in the game. They had their spots, and then Ohio State contained them in the second half completely. But in the first half, they were running fairly effectively, and they get a 3rd and 1. Well, if you're going to throw on 3rd and 1, then you've determined that, number one, the risk reward doesn't make any sense if you're running the ball pretty well, that you either take a shot. You don't throw like a 4-yard slant on 3rd and 1. You get the first. You either make sure you get the first down, or you go for it and you chuck it downfield. You try to design a big play, and then you come back and go for it on 4th down.
Yeah. So I get what's the last caller? I forget his name. But anyways, the last caller, I get what he was saying. I like defensive games too. Don't get me wrong, but both things can be true. It could be a defensive game, and it felt like, and you might not like this, it felt like a Big Ten West game where you got really good defenses, but there's some ineptitude on offense. Like there's some ineptitude, like especially on Penn State side, not as much on Ohio State side, but you put your quarterback in bad positions. He's a young quarterback. It got to the point where he's airmailing everything. He's completely rattled. And credit to Ohio State for that. But I get what the last caller was saying. You probably ain't going to agree with that, but
ineptitude might be a bit strong. Maybe substandard or not up to expectations, not up to their talent level, but ineptitude might be a little bit strong. I think it had more to do with the 2 defenses.
No, there's a ton of credit goes to the defenses, but I think both things can be true. They did not put Drew Aller in position to succeed in this game, period. And 2 stats really came up in this game: the yards per play stat for Penn State on offense. Jim Knowles this year changed the philosophy of his defense, and that to me is why they're so much better. But in this game, Jim Knowles realized they don't attempt anything downfield. They don't attempt anything barely 10 yards downfield. So he brought a lot of pressure. He did a lot of cover 1. He did more cover 0 than he's done all year.
Did you hear James Franklin's response this week when a reporter asked him if they ever call a play where regardless of who's open, they're determined that they're just going to, throw the bomb, just throw a 9 route, a go route, regardless if it's open. And James Franklin just made fun of this reporter up and down. Like, you were making me
I heard that.
believe that you're saying this. Why would we? I would never tell a quarterback to do that. I get what he's saying, but at the same time, Yeah, if you look at Jalen Milroe and how he's succeeding at Alabama, there are certain plays where he doesn't have a decision. He's throwing the go route, and he's either going to overthrow everyone or he's going to throw a touchdown.
Yeah, and like I get what the reporter was asking. He just didn't ask it well. What he was trying to say was, shouldn't you guys work on plays that are more than 10 yards down the field?
Yes.
That's what he was trying to ask. And honestly, you saw it in this game. The timing was terrible between him and his receivers. The announcers were saying it. And part of that is Ohio State. They were getting tons of pressure. But when you don't work on those things for 7 games, 6, 7 games, and all you're doing is little 5-yard passes and running, and it's going to bite you against teams like this. It just is.
I think their receivers are okay, but I also don't think they got much separation, and I don't think they were much of a threat.
No. And Drew Aller, he's not that mobile. Like he could barely move. McCord, real quick. In my opinion, McCord is what he is at this point. He can make some elite throws, but he's gonna miss a lot of throws too. You're 7 games into the season. It's his 3rd year with the program. I just don't see. I don't see it. I don't see it. And I'm surprised teams don't try to bracket Marvin Harrison more. Like in this game, it kind of reminded me of some Don Brown defense that Penn State was doing. Like the way you guys were like just crossing them up.
Yeah.
You know, that one-on-one play that was also a PI with Marv. That was a terrible defensive call. You're leaving this dude one-on-one with arguably the best wide receiver in the country, and that whole side of the field was empty.
Yeah.
I mean, easy throw. It's a pitch and catch. But yeah, I don't think
the DB actually played it pretty well.
Yeah, they called PI on it. I don't know if you agreed with that call, but yeah, and then I don't get people saying that, oh, we were out without our RB1, we were without RB2. I don't know who the RB1 is on Ohio State.
Yeah, I don't either.
People say that like it's, oh, imagine if we had these guys. I don't even know who the best running back is. They seem to all have their little thing that they're good at, but no running back's really.
Well, I do know who their best running back is based on my observation. As a running back, it's Aiden. But he's apparently too much of a liability in pass pro. Yeah, so like I keep hearing this, and obviously it's Ohio State fans like, oh man, imagine if we had. I'm like, do I imagine that? Because every running back has their thing that they're better at than the other running back. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think that a winning formula for a national championship is going to be running Mayan Williams 22 times like they did today. I'll tell you what, though, that was good for against Penn State because I saw on Twitter today that they kept saying which team is going to actually commit to running the ball first, and it happened to be Ohio State. And that works against Penn State because they are light in the middle, and especially when what's his name went down. Oh man, Chop Robinson. Yeah, especially when he went down. I mean, put the bully ball running back in there and let him get chunks, wear him out. So I don't blame for that at all. And then I want to say this: I think Ohio State could win any of their games, any of the rest of their games, including Michigan. They can. They got to. Anytime you got a defense like that, you're in every game. But I know Michigan, and now I'm going to talk about Michigan real quick. I know Michigan hasn't played him. I get it. But to me, you watch the teams, they just look clearly better. I mean, and we can't. It's hard to argue this, but they keep doing this. All these historical things. First team since 1981, Clemson, to not allow 10 points in their first 8 games. More than 10 points in their first 8 games. A team still hasn't gotten to the 10-yard line. And by the way, Connor Stallings wasn't there, so it wasn't sign stealing. I just want to throw that out there. The sign stealing guy wasn't even there, so I'm not even sure that's even a big impact. All right. So, look, I want to play somebody. I'm sick of this, man. We need to play somebody. It's time we play somebody. We still wait till Penn State. It's getting frustrating. And then my last comment's going to be Alabama and Ohio State.
I think are very similar, but on offense, I think it's flipped. I think Ohio State has trouble running the ball, right? They both have really good defenses with offenses that have flaws.
Yeah.
You kind of get what I'm trying to say.
Oh yeah.
They to me, they're kind of in the same category, except Ohio State has the best wins. I would probably put Ohio State 1 just based off wins, 100%.
Now, in 2 weeks, if Penn State plays the way they did today and Michigan keeps playing the way they are, I think Penn State's capable of winning the game, but they are going to have to play lights out. I think if they play the way they have been playing and Penn State rolls out that kind of performance today, I think Michigan wins 31-10.
Oh yeah, but I will say this though. JJ, who I'm starting to think can actually win the Heisman this year, especially with the Caleb situation. He is a risk taker. Like there was even some throws today where he's fitting into like microscopic windows, and Penn State can grab those, and that is a chance for them if there was an avenue for them to win that game. If they could get some turnovers off JJ, that's their avenue. And I know that's kind of wishful thinking, but that is an avenue.
Well, when you've got that much talent on defense, I think you always have a chance. And they're loaded with talent on both sides of the ball. But everything that you just said about the passing game for Penn State has been true to a certain extent the whole season. Like when they played Illinois, their passing game wasn't clicking, but against Ohio State, it was just magnified 10 times than it has been against these other teams. But it's not like their passing game has been tearing it up.
Yeah, and the other thing is, Drew Clifford doesn't have as good of an arm as Alar, but he can bail you out with his feet. Drew Aller, if you get him uncomfortable, he's not bailing you out with his feet. He's very immobile. He kind of reminds me, and I don't know, he's probably better than this guy. He kind of reminds me of Spate. I don't know if you remember Spate at Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
He reminds me of Spate, a big dude that can make throws, but is super immobile in the pocket.
Well, man, you are making Penn State fans' stomachs turn if they don't think that Drew Aller is going to be any better than Wilton Spate. Wow.
I mean, Spate in 2016 was pretty good. He wasn't like
good, but Drew Aller is supposed to be a top level quarterback. Is where
yeah
into.
Yeah, no, that's true, man. I'm gonna go, but I'm gonna say this to the college football nation: start praying for your teams. The NCAA ticked off the wrong team. You saw it tonight. They went for a touchdown with 20 seconds left. They went for the two-minute drill before halftime. They really probably should have scored on that. If it wasn't for a false start, it was a touchdown. They had 2 touchdowns on that drive. They out for blood. If they could run it up on anybody, they're going to run it up. You could feel it. They feel disrespected. And I hope if this investigation turns out they did nothing wrong, I hope the apologies are as loud as the disrespect. And I'm mainly talking about the media too. The media has really jumped on this investigation without it even being concluded, and they're saying some wild things.
Who?
Wild things. The media.
Yes, I heard you say the media, but the media.
There's an Atlantic. There's a reporter with the Atlantic on Twitter saying things like they're cheating in games, vacate everything. Just coming there. I mean, you see it across. There were some things Reese Davis was saying today. There was things that. All I'm saying is, as a media report, you should report on the factual things. Don't jump the gun and start claiming that a program is doing this. They're despicable. Vacate their things. Just wait for the conclusion. Because I'm telling you right now, you put a chip on this team's shoulder that you shouldn't have put on it. And I pray for these teams. I'm praying for them.
Well, they needed prayers anyway. So
I might pray for them, man. I swear I might pray for them because it's about to get ugly.
Well, I will say this, Michigan man, when it comes to these allegations, I hope this is very clear to anybody watching. We did a live stream right after all this stuff came out. that anytime that I talk about what should be done to a team, a program, if allegations like this are true, that's exactly what I'm stating. I'm
Yeah,
making
I'm
it
not talking
clear.
about you, just to
I'm
be
making it
clear.
clear that if they're guilty, then this is what I believe should happen. But in no way, you're exactly right, should any of us, including Ohio State fans, should in any way be just assuming the worst.
Yeah, and it's some of the worst media reports. The ESPN article, the Atlantic article, a lot of it is vague statements, no evidential facts, nothing, and a lot of it they're already coming to the conclusion that that Michigan's doing this. It's crazy to me.
Well,
It's some of the worst report. And by the way, there's a problem with NCAA. I don't understand how you can drag a program through the mud, right? You haven't found anything out. The program's not even allowed to respond to defend themselves. They should do the investigation and then come out with the information. Not announce that they're investigating this team for this, or leak a bunch of information, and the program can't even defend themselves. I just disagree with the whole process. And if Michigan did do it, give them whatever punishment they deem fit. I just hate the whole process.
well, I do as well, because there should just be reporting that these are the allegations. And if the allegations are true, this is what it entails, that they did A, B, and C. And until further notice, we have to wait until the investigation is concluded. Period.
Yeah. But
Joe Platt was asked about it today during the Ohio State game.
I heard it.
He just
I heard
flat
that
out
too.
said, well, there's an investigation. We're going to have to wait till the end of the investigation.
Which is how you should say it. But my main problem is with, okay, so like in any other form of life, that they do the investigation and then they announce the results to the public. That's typically how it's done. The NCAA gets word of something, they decide to investigate it, and it gets announced right away before it's even credible. And then the program that gets accused can't even defend themselves. That's my problem with it.
Well,
That's my main problem with it.
That happens in the regular news cycle. We know what people are being investigated for.
Yes, but I'm saying the body that's investigating them, right? You might hear about it, but I'm saying, and usually the reporting to me is actually is I get what you're saying. But most of the time, you don't hear stuff like this that we've been hearing until the investigation is concluded, is what I'm saying. I'm talking in terms of people saying they're cheaters. They got this vast network out there, like the Atlantic State. They got a vast network. The Big Ten representatives said they got a vast network, and then they just leave it there. Well, they don't say what it is. They don't say that there's any evidence for it. Like
Michigan man, I completely agree with you. But I don't know how much news you take in, but that's done all the time, and it shouldn't be done, but it is.
Okay, I'm with you, man. Hey, just pray for the teams, man. Pray for them.
Okay, you're gonna be.
This reminds me of Georgia last year when they was like, man, they thought we were gonna go 7-5. You put ammo in the weapon. Now we about to blast off. All right, I gotta get out of here, man.
All right, Michigan man chiming in. Now we got Rob on the line. Rob, what's going on tonight?
Hey, what's up, Mark? So, yeah, I don't think I really don't know how many people honestly thought Georgia was going to go 7-5 last year. That was a lot of coach speak, I think. But
yeah, I don't know of anyone who thought that they were going to lose 5 games. Now, did Kirby Smart throw out the 7-5 record?
I think that was what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like we used to hear that from Tom Brady during the playoffs every year. Everybody doubted us. Nobody gave us a chance. And I would always look around like, who's not giving you a chance? What are you talking about?
Right. Yeah. It's a lot of like, they have to do that, right? Because when you're near the top or at the top, you kind of have to give yourself a chip to like motivate yourself. Otherwise, you just go out and do what Georgia's been kind of doing this year, seemingly, just kind of walking through a lot of their games, close games against inferior opponents. But hey, who's to say how good Georgia? They haven't lost yet. That's what you have to do. You have to go out and win your games. And the undefeated list is dwindling every week. So can't knock them too hard until they actually lose. But yeah, it hasn't been pretty. That's for sure. It's interesting to me, some of these games this week. I am stunned by some of these outcomes, including, I mean, this game is not over yet. There's still, over an entire quarter, but Washington, as we speak, is losing by 4 to Arizona State.
That is awesome. I love
Yeah.
that. Not because I've got anything against Washington. It's just fun.
Right. Yeah. I mean, who would have thought, right? I mean, we all saw that game last week with Washington and Oregon, which clearly looked like one of the best games, if not the best game of the year so far. And now Washington is just coming out flat, and it's crazy. Now again, I mean, Washington could turn this around and win, 42-7 or whatever. I mean, who knows how that game's going to play out, but yeah, so far it's not what a lot of people predicted. I want to throw out for Duke. I feel so bad for Duke right now, and I mean, they were leading the game, driving in the red zone with Leonard Riley, and then he goes down again, and the backup quarterback comes in, and that's just where all like the balloon just popped at that point, and they lost all the momentum and just kind of, FSU took advantage, and props to FSU for taking advantage of that situation. But man, I feel bad for Duke because they've got a really good team that just can't catch the breaks.
They have a really, really good team. You're
Yep.
right. And they were not ranked appropriately, in my opinion. And after this loss, because a lot of people will look at an 18-point loss, they will not be ranked appropriately, may not be ranked at all next week, which will be ridiculous because if you watch the game, you realize how good their team is. And there were a couple situations. So the one that you just pointed out, they were actually inside the 10-yard line, and then had to bring in, I don't know how credible this is when you bring in your backup. And I know he started and played the entire game last week, but they had him try a 4th and 3 play that he overthrew in the end zone. He was under tremendous duress. And so they bypassed the field goal to go for a 2-score lead. And I get it because you can put yourself in a really good position there. And then it just kind of cascaded downhill from there because they lose their quarterback and they blow a 4th down play that could have given them a 2-score lead. And then the officials really blew it early in the third quarter. Mike Elko, they had that play on where they were going to bypass the punt and keep the same players on the field and run a 4th and 2 play. And Florida State was running around like Hank Stram used to say, what did he call it? A Chinese fire drill. But Florida State guys running all over the place, and the officials held up the play and allowed them to switch out when they shouldn't have. But anyway, you sounds like you saw it. And so.
Right. Yeah, that was not good. And
yeah, I feel bad for Duke as well.
And I do gotta say, bringing up that point that you talked about with, I think going for it there was just the wrong call. And I like Mike Elko. I think he's an amazing coach. I think he's done a tremendous job with Duke. Obviously, I mean, we're talking about a basketball school that's like competing with some of the top teams in the country this year. Taking it down to the wire with Notre Dame. Taking it like they were winning against FSU late in the game. It's just. But yeah, I think that was the wrong call for Mike Elko. I think he should have, and again, who's to say it's revisionist history, but I didn't like the call at the time. I felt like take the points, give your team, like, especially with the backup coming in there, I feel like you really needed to give your team a little win, like a little victory, like, hey guys, like we need the points to feel good about ourselves. And like, let's get into a groove with our backup here. And he just, and going for it's a gutsy play. If it would have worked, everybody would have been saying he's a genius. And again, nothing against Mike Elko. He's a great coach, great guy. But I do think that was the wrong call in that moment.
Yeah, I do as well. I just think your odds of making that you're probably 15 or 20%
Yeah.
against that defense in that situation to throw the ball in the end zone where you don't have much space. So yeah, I'm with you, but I do see the rationale there that you're going for it. You're showing your team that you've got confidence. You're going down to Tallahassee thinking, okay, we got to take some calculated risks to pull this off.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely not, it's not like a terrible call.
No,
It's not like the Miami blunder or anything like that,
no.
but it is one of those calls where, you know, probably not the best decision. I mean, yeah, if they make it, then that's great. But, you know, unfortunately they didn't, and it kind of deflated the team even more. But yeah, Oklahoma struggling against UCF was a shocker. I did not see that coming. They did win, but by 2 points. Yeah, that was crazy. Ohio State's game against Penn State, honestly, to me was just, I mean, Ohio State just looked much better. Like, I know it wasn't a super, but I mean, Penn State got their second, you know, they got their touchdown in garbage time there. I mean, it was like the game was already over. You know, I mean, they handled Penn State. They handled them. So, not what I expected. I did expect Ohio State to win, but they just won in a more convincing fashion than I thought.
Yeah,
But,
I'm right there with you. I
yeah.
picked them to win, but I did take the 5.5 with Penn State. And you know,
Yeah, I mean,
I've got a betting guy that comes on here, Steve Merrill, and we go through all the games, and his model had Ohio State winning by like 11 points. So he was on it. I was
yeah,
kind of surprised by that.
pretty close. Yeah, Air Force continues their streak there,
Yes,
so that's pretty
I
cool.
love that too. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's great.
Oregon handled business against Washington, so now the pressure is even more on Washington State. So the pressure is even more on Washington to take care of Arizona State here. And of course, we have to talk about USC versus Utah. I mean, that's you know, I was watching the game on YouTube. You know, USC versus Utah there, and when Caleb got the score there near the end, and all the USC fans on the chat were like, "Yeah, well, now we got this King Caleb, you know, Daddy Caleb," and I'm just like, "There's a lot of time left on the clock, guys. You know, like let's not let's not celebrate too early." And it's not like I was rooting. I was actually rooting for USC. I feel scummy to say that as a Notre Dame fan, but of course, you know, you want your wins to look a little bit better. So I was hoping USC would, you know, wrap that one up. But hey, you know, props to Utah. That was a gritty win, and I don't know, USC. Caleb, as you pointed out earlier, his stats in top 25, you know, defensive, going up against top 25 defensive teams, they have not been great. So his Heisman win last year, while it was somewhat deserved, it's kind of, I thought at the time it was a bit of a questionable Heisman win because you know, USC hadn't really played anyone all that great last year, including Notre Dame. We had a down year last year. And like he going up against like elite defenses last year, he was not like lights out. Like, and I think, yeah, I don't know. I just think Caleb is a bit. And look, it's not all his fault. He's going up against his offensive line has been letting him down massively over the last several weeks. So they need to protect him better. But he's making some really bad decisions of late. It's kind of interesting to see.
So the stat that I saw that Fox posted was Caleb Williams against top 25 defenses. And I'm looking at last year's stats, and he had, from what I remember, a great game against Notre Dame. And Notre Dame was number 21 last year. Oregon State was 25. So they held him down. And maybe they're going by a different metric, but Utah was number 27 in yards per game. So they might be including Utah as well. But those are the three teams that he played in 4 games that were in the top 25 last year. I don't know who would be this year. Probably Notre Dame, I'm guessing. Let's see. Notre Dame, yeah, is number 14 this year. So that's 4 games against those 3 teams last year, and it's Notre Dame this year. And I guess that would be it.
Right. Yeah, Notre Dame's defense this year is it's really strong. Like we don't have the like our secondary is fantastic, obviously, but yeah, we're pretty good. We're not like obviously we're not like top 5 statistically, But that Louisville game hurt quite a bit. That was just a weird outlier game. But yeah, it's interesting to watch USC going forward. I thought they were going to win tonight. Even before the game, I thought they could like bounce back and beat Utah, but they just didn't quite manage it. And say what you want about the defense. I think their defense probably played well enough for them to win. I just think their offense again has kind of let them down in two games in a row here.
Yeah, I just popped on this Washington-Arizona State game in front of me, and it's just kind of inconceivable that, Washington, we're getting near the end of the third quarter, and they've got a field goal. It's just crazy.
It is. It's mind-blowing. There's been a lot of just crazy games this week. And I want to say one more thing about Michigan real quick before I go. So two things about Michigan real quick. So there's two things can be true, right? I think a lot of these I think the NCAA has like a vendetta against Jim Harbaugh or something. And look, I'm not a Michigan fan in the slightest. I'm a Notre Dame guy, so Michigan, I don't like Michigan. But I also don't think they've been, I think for some reason, and I don't know why, but they've just really been going after them. Like we're kidding ourselves if we think we live in a college football landscape where Michigan is the only team that's doing these things that NCAA is accusing them of. And I'm not saying that, if they are advanced scouting, obviously that's wrong, but let's not kid ourselves in thinking that, Michigan's the only team out there doing stuff like this. So, yes, if they're guilty, they should be penalized heavily. And then it's just a matter of like, hey, don't get caught. Be better at doing that thing if you're going to do that thing. I'm not advocating for it, by the way, just saying. But yeah, I do think it's kind of odd that the NCAA is going so hard after Michigan, like the last couple seasons. But the other thing I'll say about Michigan, and it's not so much about Michigan as it's about the fans. Some of the fans' comments I've seen here. Look, like I could sit here and talk about how great Notre Dame looked in the first 4 games of the season when we weren't playing anybody. It's like, oh yeah, we're blowing everybody away. Our defense looks amazing. Oh, it's all sunshine and rainbows. Then we played Ohio State, Duke, Louisville, USC. Like we had a gauntlet there, and obviously we came back down to earth a little bit. So, and I was thinking the whole way, yeah, like we're playing well. We haven't played anybody, so let's calm the brakes. Some of the Notre Dame guys were like, oh yeah, we're just no. I knew we weren't playing anybody like in the first 4 games of the year. And that's basically what Michigan's been doing all season long. So, like, yes, you guys look great. No, not taking anything away from your dominant victories. But, enjoy it because now you got some real games coming up, pretty soon. So,
What category of teams would you put Notre Dame in?
It's hard to say. I mean, if you're a legit college football playoff contender, you really shouldn't have a game like Notre Dame had against Louisville. I don't care that we didn't have a bye until after week 8. Yeah, we were banged up, our wide receivers especially. And that's one thing that I will say in our defense, nobody's talking about this, but Jaden Greathouse, they were banged up, like hamstring injuries for our 2 top receivers. And I use top with air quotes because, they're not going to wow anybody statistically. But hey, when you're missing your 2 top receivers, that's going to hurt most teams. So yeah, we were either missing them or they were hampered. Like Greathouse has been our number 1 guy he probably would have been our number 1 guy for the whole year, but he's been dealing with an injury the whole season, or most of the season. So it's been rough. But even saying that, I mean, you shouldn't have a game like you did against Louisville. So I'm not going to put them in like top 5. I do think they're on that fringe, like top 10 area. I think when their defense is playing, obviously as well as it did against USC. I mean, Xavier Watts just had a game out of his mind, and we've already got Benjamin Morrison and Cam Hart, and yeah, we've got a tremendous backfield that can contend with anybody. So, I do think we're like top 10. Possibly, we have the potential to play with almost anybody if we're playing our best. But that's the thing; we haven't really put together a complete game all season against top competition. So yeah, I'd say we're in that top 10 area.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. That's about where I've got Notre Dame. I was just curious. This is amazing. It just continues on the same point. Washington comes into this game, number 1 in the nation in yards per game, yards per play. They just not only punted, but they punted 4th and 14. So they gained -4 yards on 3 plays. I think they got a first down before that, but they just punted, and now Arizona State's going to get the ball back with 2 minutes left in the third quarter.
Wow, that's absolutely insane. Well, on that really hilarious note, Mark, I'm going to let you go. I know you got other callers, so thanks for having me on.
Good to have you, Rob. Thank you. Have a good
Yep.
night.
You too.
Our Notre Dame fan, Rob, checking in. Yeah, I think I don't care what the record is. I know Notre Dame has lost 2 games, and therefore they are out of the national championship race. And I get it. You got to credit the wins and the losses. They have to count. But Notre Dame's a really good team. That's all there is to it. I think we live too much in this area of there's only like one great team or 3 great teams, and everybody else is trash. Hate hearing that term. Trash. You're trash. They're trash. They're trash. They're garbage. Like these really elite athletes that play for like the 7th best team in the country. They're trash. Penn State's trash. Goodness. Okay. Well, Washington's trash tonight, I guess. All right. I want to remind everyone that you can follow us at the Voice of College Football on Instagram and also on Facebook. You just go to those 2 fine platforms there, Instagram and Facebook, and you can follow us there. Also, listen up. If you own a business, you can benefit by partnering with us here at the Voice of College Football, or if you just want to sponsor a particular show, whether it be this call-in show or the channel or any particular favorite team that you've got. We've got Exploring with Ben standing by. If you want to sponsor our Oregon channel, if you love the Ducks, please contact me at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. We can benefit you by partnering with us. Let's get Ben in here. Look at this.
Am I the only non-delusional fan base tonight?
Oh, yes, of course. I think you are the only one all the time, right?
Well, we try to be honest. Like, I am watching Washington and Arizona State. Washington is in a very hangover game. I'm surprised this lasted this
Of
long.
course they are.
It's like the desert came to Husky Stadium tonight.
Yeah, Arizona State just ripped off a 14-yard run.
Yes, they did.
This is amazing.
124 yards rushing to 18 for Washington. Wow. I mean,
And
Oregon had a hangover game earlier. It lasted a little longer. We thought it was going to. It went into the early 3rd quarter. Props to Washington State for giving it their all. I mean,
now Washington State's looks like garbage the last couple of weeks, but they have been over the course of a season much better than Arizona State. Number one. Number two, once you guys kicked it into gear, like for Washington to have to kick it into gear like you guys did, they are going to have to really get going here because you guys won that game easily when it came right down to it.
well, and again, I give full props to Washington State because, 2 weeks in a row, they have looked just
Especially
awful.
last week.
But
yeah,
they came in today. They're like, hey, Oregon was having a hangover from the Washington game. That happens. That's a thing in sports. And they gave everything they had. I mean, they scored a kind of a garbage touchdown at the 2 minutes left,
I was very pleased about.
Betting, Mark. You're such a gambler.
I'm not a gambler. I just pick the games. That's who I root for. I root for the teams that I pick.
But this Washington Arizona State 7-3 going into the 4th
And
now.
I've got Arizona State in 27 tonight. So this is great.
That is a hangover game. But I just had to call in because tonight has kind of riled me up for some reason because there's so many delusional fan bases that are making excuses and excuses and excuses for their performances when people have told them this is what's going to happen repeatedly for over a year. And they're like, no. And now tonight they're like, well, maybe, but they're still making excuses. I'm like, nah. It's time. We're calling you out. Because you guys are delusional.
Should I take a guess as to maybe what fan base you're talking about most?
Probably.
USC.
Mark, you have won the gambling trophy tonight. You have won the bet. Yeah. No, we've been telling that fan base for like a year. Like, dude, this is what you're going to be. And now they're going, Yeah, maybe. And I'm like, yeah, but you sold the house. You literally sold the stadium. You're stuck. This is who you are. You lost to a backup quarterback. Backup quarterbacks. I apologize.
Yeah.
With no time management. And I'm sorry for USC specifically, just because it bugged me so much because we talk about, college, especially sportsmanship. When USC lost and Caleb just sat on the bench with his head back going, ugh, and didn't even want to go up and shake anyone's hands. A Utah player went over and like patted him on the shoulder, and he just walked into the tunnel. I'm like, wow, he's so busy thinking about his next Wendy's commercial shoot. It just totally rubbed me the wrong way. Like, he's not focused about that team. All he cares about is stats. That's why he ran for that touchdown. Because had you had a common sense, you would have gone, get 5 yards, get the first down, get down, run out the clock, score, win the game.
Well, I'm not going to take it that far in my criticism of Caleb Williams, that he's not a team player. I don't necessarily see evidence. Now, your first point about him sulking on the sideline and not doing we expect San Jose State or Nevada to get their brains beat in by 50 points and just be all good with that and go out to midfield and shake everybody's hands. And this guy loses once in a while and he can't do the same. Yeah, I don't agree with that.
Well, and I'm not calling. I won't say that's on Caleb necessarily too. The stat thing. I think that's it was something that happened. Like a couple weeks ago too, where it came down to time management with Lincoln Riley, where it seems like they're more worried about stats than the game. Sometimes, like I think it was Colorado, they were still throwing it instead of running it. Trying to like bleed clock. They were so just like stat. Like that's what it felt like. And even the USC guys admitted it. They're like, yeah, there's something wrong with this.
Yeah, that's not a winning mentality. That's not a championship team mentality. The stats are going to come with good play. And if you don't throw for, 350 and you throw for 300 because you actually played to the game conditions and you milked the clock and did what you needed to do to ensure the win and not try to pad stats, then yeah, that's not a championship team mentality. And Lincoln Riley, if he's truly coaching like that, yeah, that's not going to cut it.
Yeah, I mean, like I tuned into, Jordan with the Clemson game, and they were just like, I don't know what's up with this team. And I'm like, that's the response, because you've seen this and you're like, yeah, I don't know what's going on. But there are just too many fan bases all around that are just a little too delusional, that can't admit a down game or admit that, hey, there's a problem here.
Like you brought up USC as being on that list. Do you have anyone else in mind?
Miami is still delusional just because you beat a down Clemson game. Relax, Miami. You're not back.
Well, they should be happy about that.
They should be happy. No, they are happy. I did troll them. I trolled them very, very lightly tonight. Very lightly. I give them props. At least they didn't screw up taking a knee.
Most of the Miami fans I come across are pretty reasonable, but you're right. No, they've got a long ways to go.
I'm just more blown away by this Washington game. Again, a hangover is a hangover. We get it. That happens in sports. It happens, especially at college level. I'm just blown away with this. I think Washington still will pull it out at the very end. But if they don't, I don't even know what I would say about that. I wouldn't even troll them. I would just be like, wow. Like, wow, that's bad. We gave up 400 yards to Cam Ward. Fine. We gave up 60 yards rushing. They're average. They're an air raid. I mean, what do you expect? You're going to give up yards to a passing team. Fine.
And
But-
this is how reactionary most fans are, is that Penix has been putting up, and he's an amazing quarterback. Regardless of what happens the rest of this game, if he goes 0 for 10 the rest of this game, he's still a great quarterback. But since they've been putting up all these insane statistics and then they get the win against you. See, I come away from that game, that Oregon-Washington game, not as, okay, Washington's a national championship contender now, and Oregon's just kind of some second-rate team. That game was that close. You know that better than me. It was, and that was at Husky Stadium, and that's with Dan Lanning making some questionable, very gutsy, but questionable decisions. That was a lot of things going against Oregon. You mentioned, and I was watching the game every play, the two cornerbacks that had to leave the game for Oregon. That's with missing a couple field goals, including the one that would have sent that game to overtime on the road. So to me, you come away from that game, and sure, you got to credit the win and you've got to credit the loss in the rankings. But to me, actually, Oregon went up 2 spots in my rankings because I thought that actually confirmed how good they are.
Well, yeah, no, 100%. I mean, because you mentioned the cornerbacks went out. Our backups did pretty decent. And then tonight we didn't have, against Cam Ward, we didn't have our starting quarterback, Jackson. He didn't play. And, that's not an excuse. Guess what? He's been dinged up a lot. So they held him out. It's like, hey, gave up yards, still did what you need to do. But that's it. The Washington game, yeah, I thought both those teams, I mean, I think that game showed how even those two teams are. So that's why I'm just more surprised by how Washington is playing tonight. I'm like, Washington, come on, turn it up. But
Arizona State just went for it on 4th and 3. It's one of those, they're at the outside of fringe field goal range, thought that it was worth taking a shot. And actually Washington didn't. Oh, they were at the Washington 30. So Washington didn't stop them. The quarterback overthrew the pass, or they would have converted the first down. So they gave it up back to Washington, and now the Huskies have the ball.
It's still though, 7-3, fourth quarter, 13:50 left to go. I mean, it's surprising. I'm like, Arizona State's, of course, every team's going to give the upper teams their best shot. I'm just surprised Arizona State says, this makes me nervous to now go to Arizona State and play them. This makes me a little more nervous.
Yeah, I know.
But I have to comment, because we've been giving I have to give a shot at someone here on Sunday night. Not a shot, but
you see our colors just change here. You would probably understand this better than I would about StreamYard, but somebody must be in here messing around and they just changed our colors. Or whatever that is.
I know someone who does that in the background once in a while.
Like
USC.
Pull up those are like
Yeah,
USC colors.
Not necessarily, but I do know someone who's done that before and changed the whole layout and colors and to pull up one thing before. I do know someone who does that. I won't say it's a certain delusional fan base person, but it could be. I will give a little shot at Go Blue quickly, because he's like, oh, well, the media about Michigan specifically.
Yes.
I'm sorry. He would not be complaining if it was the media saying Ohio State is stealing signs and cheat. He would not have a complaint in the world. It's only because it's about Michigan.
That's where
let's get it straight right now.
Exactly.
Let's get it straight.
Exactly. And this is where I'm trying to bring everyone. I'm trying to bring everyone to a place, and I know I'm going to fail miserably at it, where when there are situations like this, whether you're an Ohio State fan, Michigan fan, whoever you root for, you can look at a situation like this and say, if they did it, this is horrible, and they shouldn't do it, and they should be penalized in A, B, and C, and we all would have our own different line in the sand about how it should be dealt with. But until then, we'll just let the investigation play out and see what happens. But the Ohio State fans are, of course, piling on like this is the worst thing that ever happened, and they're guilty, and they did it. And I understand that that's part of being the fun of being a college football fan, a sports fan, and where the Michigan fans are just saying, well, everybody does it and they're just going after us and the NCAA's got it out for us. And
again, it was more if it's not right for the media to do it. But again, if it was Ohio State doing it, he would be all over it and be like, Ohio State, you're garbage, you're trash. That's why, And so I don't fall for those those things. It's like, let it play out. It'll take 3 years. Nothing will happen. Although I guess they did suspend that assistant or whatever.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't know what that is due to, but a little interesting.
Michigan suspended him.
Yeah. So a little interesting.
So well, I don't know what that really tells us. Does that tell us that?
No, it doesn't tell us. It doesn't tell us anything.
In a sense, it almost seems like it's an admittance to guilt that if you're suspending somebody on the staff.
Well, that's what I mean. I was like, it's an interesting tidbit because it doesn't say anything, but why would all of a sudden someone get suspended immediately?
Yeah,
within like a day or two.
Completely free of wrongdoing, I wouldn't be suspending anyone. Now, it could be that this individual is acting on his own, which I kind of find that difficult to believe that somebody's going to be some rogue scout on their own.
Well, he doesn't seem like some main assistant either. He seems like a third tier. So someone told him, go here, and probably paid his way somehow or something, so who knows? I'm not saying anything, but I'm just saying, like, when he's calling out the media shouldn't be doing this, it's like, hold on, you would love it if it was Ohio State or something like that. You would love it.
Did we name that incorrectly because blank name is saying suspended with pay?
That's not surprising. I mean, a lot of people, when they get suspended under suspicion, they still get suspended with pay, unless it's like a known they did this. So I guess that's not shocking. And again, he's not like he's not like the OC. He's like a third or fourth level, like, assistant or something like that, like an analyst, probably. Yes. But, well, all right, Mark, I just wanted to call out all the hypocrisy of the delusional fan bases. Trojans.
Yeah. yeah.
And
by the way, let everyone know that I believe, unless you have suspended the show for this week, that we've got a college football after dark.
I'm still thinking of the title. It might just be delusional fan bases. I'm not sure.
But it is a college football after dark edition. I just want to make sure that everyone here knows that Ben and the crew will be back at it on Sunday night right here on the main channel for the College Football After Dark show.
10 Eastern time, Sunday night. So please join us here, and then join me on the Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Central time for the Oregon Live show, weekly show, as well as the post-game shows with all the other guys, Derek, Sean, and Spaz. And Mark, please keep your delusional fan bases off the screen, though. The USC.
All right, Ben. Have a good one. All right. Again, Exploring with Ben. He's got a great channel himself, Exploring with Ben and Sam. Check it out. And then also you catch Ben and the rest of the crew doing Oregon post-game on the Oregon channel. They also do an Oregon show on Tuesday nights at 10 Eastern. And then College Football After Dark is coming up Sunday night right here at the Voice of College Football at, I believe, 10 Eastern as well. Let's hit these super chats. We appreciate those contributions coming in here. We've got Jay Roddy. Good win for the Buckeyes and Wolverines. Can you comment on Kyle McCord and his lack of development? From an Ohio State fan perspective, it just seems like he is not developing with his accuracy. Okay, that's fair. I do think he's developing, and there are different ways to develop. Of course, there are various aspects of any quarterback's game. I think he's developing in regards to We saw the first few weeks of the season that he wasn't throwing with much conviction, really letting it loose. He was kind of guiding the ball. He wasn't really letting his arm talent show. And he has seemed to be more comfortable and is really cutting loose on his throws. So he's gotten past that aspect. We have also seen where his pocket awareness still isn't the best, but he's only played 7 games. So that's continuing to develop the pocket awareness. There were certain aspects during the Maryland game in particular where it was pointed out that he was checking down. He was getting a little bit too nervous, a little too much jumping the gun to check down to a back rather than allow the windows downfield to open and the receivers to clear and for the routes to develop, even though the pass blocking was exceptional at times. But he seems to have gotten past that. Now, in terms of the accuracy, I would agree. His accuracy in this game, especially in the second quarter. So he came out and he came out strong. His first 5 attempts, he was on the money. Then he went through a stretch of about 15 throws that were pretty bad. The slant or any kind of crossing route, most quarterbacks will tell you are the easiest routes to throw. The plays right in front of you, and the wide receivers running at an angle to where you can even miss the throw to a certain extent and they still have time to adjust, and you've got more variation, you've got more depth to throw the ball accurately, as opposed to like a deep out. It's difficult to throw, and there are some other throws that are more difficult to throw, and they were giving him easy slants and he was missing them. You're right. There was also a throw downfield to Carnell Tate that I don't know if he missed through it or he just didn't understand the way he needed to throw it. Tate was running up the seam and he had beaten his guy. The safety wasn't going to come anywhere close to getting over in time. And Kyle McCord he tried to throw a laser shot right at him and he was woefully behind him. And that's where the defensive back was. The defensive back was trailing on the play. He was beaten. McCord needed to throw it out there toward the post. He needed to put some air under it and let Carnell Tate run. He was already beating his man, and every step he was taking, he was gaining even more separation. McCord needed to throw it out there. That was going to be a touchdown. I don't know what to tell you. It's definitely being worked on. Now, can it be given the kind of attention that it can be given during the off season? No. So this is the issue, is that you don't want to put too much in his head to work on, because you're in the process of working with the wide receivers and the offensive line every day in practice and preparing for the next game. And you're filling his head with plays and execution of plays and film work on the defense. The off season is when you most improve your own technique, footwork, arm angles, arm slots, all of that. So it's going to be difficult for him to develop too much and clean that up, except for just getting those reps, getting more and more reps. But I think he's coming along well in other aspects. But in terms of the inaccuracy, we saw it again today for about 12 to 15 throws. And I'm not talking about 12 to 15 throws during the course of the game. I'm talking about like 12 or 15 in a row that he was throwing very few on the money, and he was missing most of them. So I'm right there with you, Jay Roddy. His accuracy is not what we have seen it. But again, you and other Ohio State fans have been spoiled. You've been watching NFL first-round quarterbacks since 2018. So 5 consecutive seasons of that. All right, we've got Joshua here who says, I hate the NCAA as much as the next guy does and wish they would go away, but this still doesn't look good for Michigan. Plus, this may push Harbaugh to leave the program for the NFL. Well, it doesn't look good for Michigan in that it could be true. But if they are exonerated, then they are exonerated, and it should be treated in the public's eye, and I will certainly treat it as though it was never investigated, because the fair is fair and innocent until proven guilty. So no, it doesn't look good, especially since they're already being investigated by the NCAA. Now they're being investigated for two issues at the same time. I don't know if it's going to push. If Jim Harbaugh really loves working with the college athletes, really loves his alma mater, which he does, we know he does, and enjoys this level of football, I don't know if these NCAA nuisances, we'll call them, the nuisance of dealing with the NCAA would be enough to push him to the NFL. Maybe it would be, because it's easy for me just to consider it a one-off, but I don't have to deal with it. So I'm not going to say that you're not correct in thinking that this could push him to the NFL where he doesn't have to deal with this kind of stuff. It's like college football has reached a point where it's professional from a money aspect, but all of these guidelines and conditions and rules are still in play that kind of keep everything on an amateur level. So you get the worst of both worlds, where you have to deal with the transfer portal and NIL and all this that has become almost professional, but you still have to keep the student athletes eligible by keeping them in class. And you have to watch recruiting violations. You have to watch all these various aspects that you wouldn't have to deal with on the NFL level, because it's a professional deal and you get paid to be professionals. All right. Then we finally got Brian. We appreciate you being here. He was talking media. Fans can say whatever. So that was in regard to the media piling on Michigan. Apparently, I've not seen these things, but apparently piling on Michigan and rushing to judgment. Yeah, fans can say whatever, but I would still like people to treat the situation as though it's being investigated, and we can speculate all we want about if it's true, then this should happen. This should be the penalty. But just because it's a team we don't like, we shouldn't be rushing to judgment. All right, let's go to Dave here at the Voice of College Football. Is this Minnesota, Dave?
Yes, it is.
Absolutely.
Yes, it is.
Thanks
oh
for
my!
your patience. What a game!
Oh, that was one of the most of the most controversial endings to a college football game, at least for against like Minnesota versus Iowa, could ever get. He was waving his hand. He was pointing at the ball. To be honest with you, I did not see this happen until like I got my power back. I went out for 2 minutes right after the touchdown happened, the punt, and my power just went right out. So I didn't see them like change the call on the field until I would say 2 minutes when I get my power back. And I'm watching the end of the game. Like, how the heck did it? He must have just stepped out of bounds, because that's the only thing that I can probably think that happened. And to have us win the game the way we did, you know what? I'll take it. It's a win against Iowa. It's been 7 years straight of us losing to Iowa. It's been how long? Shoot, almost 24 years or something like that since we've beaten Iowa in Kinnick Stadium. So, yeah, I will take it. And I personally think we deserved to win. We were a little bit more the better team, at least offensively, especially at the end. And we gave Iowa their touchdown by committing 4 penalties back to back.
Well, I would agree that, and I didn't watch this game from the beginning. I saw more of the second half than the first half, but would agree that Minnesota looked like the better team, played better, moved the football better, gained 130 more yards of total offense. And that's after Iowa had most of its passing yards in the first half. So I do think that you played a better game. I did find it difficult to watch that final penalty because I would like to see the athletes on the field decide the game, but it is a rule and therefore it
Yeah.
should be called.
Yeah. I mean, and going back to saying you like to see, the game being won. One of the penalties that Minnesota got was Tyler Newman. No more than probably right after we just stopped Iowa, like literally on the goal line on what would be going to be a 4th down. Now Iowa would have gotten it. Who knows? Because it was very, very close. But Tyler Newman, about, I would say, 20 seconds after the play is over, goes up to the quarterback, just tips the ball out of his hands. And they call personal foul on that. And I'm like, really? I mean, it wasn't like he punched the ball out of the quarterback's hands after the play. It wasn't like he kicked the ball. It wasn't anything like vicious, but it wasn't like he was like taunting or anything. It was just like, went to, tip the ball out of the quarterback's hands. And I'm going, really? You're going to now just give him like back to basically, first down, golden inches. And of course they score on that. But gosh, just the most bizarre football game in the way it ended. But it was the type of game that I expected. I mean, I expected that this was, if Minnesota was going to win this game, this was the way I thought they were going to win. It was going to be like 13-10 or like the way it ended, like 12-10. It was going to be a field goal type game. I felt, just the way the offenses are just not that good. Like it just felt like we had like college style defenses going against like high school offenses. It just felt really bad offensively.
Yeah, well, we expected nothing but that.
Yeah. I mean, this is why the West is so bad. I mean, there's really not a quarterback or any offensive player I feel that really stands out. Like,
well, at least your quarterback, he can stick his foot in the ground and throw a laser. He just
needs to learn how to put
know
touch on
where it's going.
And he needs to learn how to put touch on the ball too.
Man, he can throw. He's got the arm strength.
Yeah. It's going to take a while. It's going to take at least a year, maybe next year for him to like finally learn touch. And I got to a little bit troll Hawkeye of the Storm today. That was pretty fun.
Hopefully you were kind.
I am. Do not know how, like Corey was talking about, he was scared for the refs, like it was getting bad. And then I finally got to see it. I did not know that they were throwing. Like I said, my TV was out for 2 minutes. Like my power was out for 2 minutes, so I didn't get like I said, it was like the weirdest thing. I didn't get to see the call being overturned, and I didn't see like the this Iowa student section were throwing bottles. Like there
Yes.
was like a mini. There was like a mini version of the Cleveland Browns game from way back in the days. when they
Yes, it
overturned that
was.
one
Yep,
call.
they were not happy, and I get it.
Yeah.
But and most of the fans, they don't understand. They're going to be mad about any penalty that's called, and they are. And that's what we see every game. They boo every penalty, even if they have no understanding of what just happened.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yeah. You know, Corey was very upset. It's all the Iowa fans were talking about the whole entire time watching the Hawkeye of the Storm. And it's like, you just guys have no offense. You didn't run the ball at all. We stuffed you. We forced you to pass the ball, and you proved that you couldn't do that. You know, I mean, I'll give Iowa's credit for their offense trying to at least try to go to the receivers, but they dropped the ball. There was so many like chances for both teams to really move the ball down the field. There was just like a couple drops. You know, the Iowa quarterback was starting to throw into coverage, and he was lucky he didn't get picked off again. I was lucky they didn't have like 4 or 5 turnovers in this game. You know, they were lucky to just get the 2 and have us not convert on one of those by missing that one field goal. But I mean, this was a very, very interesting game. This was definitely a Big Ten West game. This is how all Big Ten West games are going to feel like. Yeah, that's pretty much it, Mark. Just basically want to say, if Michigan gets caught cheating, why did you have to steal signs from Minnesota? You couldn't beat us straight up? I mean, this was an easy game for you guys. Come on. If you get caught cheating in this against Minnesota, that's pretty bad.
Yes, it is at that. If. All right, Dave.
If.
Well, Minnesota controls the West, so if they can win out, or knowing the West, teams can lose 2 and 3 games and it doesn't matter. But Minnesota does control its own destiny. So, well, we appreciate you stopping by. Congratulations on the big win.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
All right, let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. We got Nick on the line. Nick, what's going on?
Hey, Mark. How's it going?
I'm good.
What are you paying attention to the Arizona State-Washington game going on?
Yeah, I've got it on right in front of me.
What are your thoughts so far?
Well, I just turned it on. My thoughts are that this is college football, so I'm not shocked, but yeah, Washington's a much better team than Arizona State, but and they're probably going to survive. I did see that Arizona State could have extended the lead to 2 scores, but threw a pick 6. So it looks like Washington's going to weather the storm, because it's difficult for me to see that Arizona State's going to score a touchdown in this game. But yeah, I never was sold on Washington being some juggernaut, great team. They're a good team, very talented team. But shoot, they went to Arizona, only won by a touchdown.
Can you elaborate on Washington's defense, in your opinion?
Well, their defense tonight has been stout, obviously. I watched them play last weekend against Oregon, and their defense didn't impress me. They got run all over the field.
Okay. Moving on to the next major Pac-12, or whatever, Pac.
Yep.
Pac, what would you call it, actually? What would you say right now? Pac
It's the Pac-12.
Is it really? Is it really?
Sure. Well, these are the teams that are currently in the Pac-12 conference. Yeah, there are 12 teams in the Pac conference this season. So, yes, it's the Pac-12.
Okay, so you're very literal. Utah versus...
Well, hang on just a second, Nick. I'm being literal because the Pac conference is literal. It was the Pac-8 until 1977, and then they added 2 schools, and they changed the name to the Pac-10. And then they added 2 schools about a decade ago, and they changed their name to the Pac-12. And they're currently playing with 12 teams during this season, so it's the Pac-12. Now,
Okay,
it's not going to be the Pac-12 come January 2nd, but it is right now.
so what are your thoughts on Utah versus USC?
Well, I didn't see the game. I had it on, but I was focused on other games until it got really good. What are my thoughts? Again, I didn't really see enough to really form any kind of an opinion. I picked USC to win, but I picked Utah to cover. So look at how the game ended. Either team could have won. It went right down to the wire. I have to give credit, a ton of credit. We should give a ton of credit for Utah to continue to play with backup quarterback and play a running back.
Yeah,
Sion Baki.
without Cam Rising.
Yes, without Cam Rising, and then they play a cornerback at running back now, Sion Baki. He's their best running back, and he plays both sides of the ball. And usually that's reserved for wide receivers playing defensive back and vice versa. But here's a running back playing defensive back, and Utah, they're just always a tough team and solid in the front seven. And obviously they gave up points that looked like were going to end the game, but they had enough poise and resolve to march down the field and do what they needed to do to win the game, and even had the presence of mind with 5 seconds left to center the ball for their field goal kicker.
What's the biggest so far? The biggest surprise win of this week for you?
Oh, Virginia over North Carolina.
Yeah, I was thinking you were going to pick that. What I didn't watch that game. For the listeners, if you could just provide me with a quick summary, if you don't want to, that's fine. Just
well, I didn't watch the game either, but I'll summarize it this way based on what I know, is that North Carolina has played one of the tougher schedules in college football, and they've obviously been able to navigate a win every week, and then they run into the worst team on their schedule at home. So we can consider that a letdown. We can consider that a trap game. But, this is, I saw a statistic that, or a fact, that this is the first time since 1961 that a team with a 1-5 or worse record beat a top 10 team on the road. So it's obviously historic.
Wait, since what? Since when?
1961.
Wow.
But again, North Carolina.
That's even, including the transfer situation today, that almost even makes that more insane. That's, wow. I don't even know what to say to that.
We saw Houston drive the ball inside the 10-yard line, down a touchdown to Texas, and come within 10 yards of tying the game or winning the game on a 2-point conversion. We saw UCF lead Oklahoma for most of the game and score a touchdown with a minute left and just miss on a 2-point conversion that would have tied the game and sent it to overtime. There are only 4 teams in America that I would be surprised to see that type of outcome. Meaning, I cannot see Virginia going to Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, or Georgia and doing that.
Well, yeah, we'll set aside Michigan, but yeah, that is
or UCF doing that to those 4 teams on the road, what they did to Oklahoma today, or any number, Houston doing what they did to Texas. Can't see that happening against those 4 teams. Those are the 4 teams that I would put in a different category.
Are you seeing, I don't know if you know a way to track this, but are you seeing, especially in recent years, teams with substantially less talented players by recruiting ranking metrics producing shocking results. Like it seems like I don't know. I know people reference 2007, and some of those years pop up, but it seems like some of those years were much more far and few between. It seems like year after year we're having more shocking results. Do you think there's anything to that, or is that just kind of more people paying more attention to games that otherwise wouldn't be more nationally approached, because of media perception there seems to be something there. Maybe I'm off. I just want to get your perspective on that.
So I think if you were to call and have this conversation with other people, that they would tend to respond a little bit more emotionally or based on just a reaction of it seems like that's what's going on. I don't necessarily buy into that. I would like to see that statistically proven that we're seeing more results, more surprising results, because that should be proven by basically the Vegas point spread that there are more shocking results. And I'm not seeing it based on that. I had a similar conversation a couple of weeks ago, so it made me go back to week 0 and I went through the entire season to determine how many upsets have there been every week. And it was really not a high number of upsets because I've tracked the upsets for the last 5 or 6 years. And there are almost like clockwork 3 to 5 upsets in the top 25 every week. And that hasn't changed. That number hasn't increased.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I remember you've actually stated that. I feel like the last couple years. Like that's not been a new thing that you've put out there within the last year or two. You've stated that since like what? I think I remember you
Yeah,
stating
I've
that
been
since like
tracking this
20.
for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's definitely not new.
So if we look at the top 25 today, I am looking for upsets. Let's see. Minnesota 3.5-point underdog at Iowa, 1. If you consider that to be some enormous upset, it's technically an upset, but it was 3.5 points. Of course, the Virginia game, 24-point underdog. They win at North Carolina. Utah, 7-point dog win at USC. There are your upsets. 3 out of 19, 20, 21 games, whatever. Out of the entire top 25, we had 3 upsets. And if Arizona State can somehow pull this game out, we would have another huge one, of course. But as it stands right now, 3 upsets today in the top 25. And that's pretty standard and has been for years.
Which is insane that it's standard, right? That's just it's essentially calculated chaos is what it looks like. But there's no point to this reason why. It just seems to happen randomly, regardless of institution, regardless of program. It just seems to happen statistically, consistently, right? Or am
Yes.
I off on that?
Yes, it happens consistently.
Do you think that that's going to change based on the new transfer rules and stuff? Do you think that there needs to be some sort of reevaluation, I guess?
So what I think is that the last 2 football seasons have been largely impacted by the transfer portal. They're the first 2 football seasons. And the numbers I just gave you haven't changed. However, I do think that there's an ability for teams to change quicker, i.e., Colorado, than there was in the past. That's obvious. Teams can turn over a roster. And so it's made situations like Mike Norvell at Florida State able to elevate quicker than maybe he and that program would have been able to, because he's been a heavy player in the transfer portal. So yeah, there's the opportunity for coaches to change a program quicker than they could in the past. I will also say what we need to understand about recruiting rankings is that each slot are not created equal.
Okay.
Meaning, like, it comes to mind, this is and I'm going to take the teams out of the example just to prove a point, and so people aren't hung up on the teams. But if you look at last year's recruiting rankings, and you could do this every year, there is the same disparity between the number 1 team in the country in recruiting and number 8 than there is between number 8 and number 27. So it cascades quickly after you get past 3, 4, 5 in that range.
Yeah,
The talent disparity drops quickly.
Which doesn't really tell me anything, because it's kind of like 2 years ago, someone might have said, well, between the number 1 team and the number 5 team, or whatever. That seems to me has shifted between, several positions. But I guess finally, my last question before I let you go, I know you have other callers. I made a statement earlier on your show that involved the SEC not making the playoffs.
Yes.
And that was a couple weeks ago. My last question is there a realistic avenue for the Final Four teams to not involve an SEC team?
Yeah, sure there is.
Okay.
So we currently have an LSU team that has a direct path to the SEC championship game. They have to beat Alabama. And since LSU lost a non-conference game to Florida State and lost it by 3 scores, you would have an LSU team in the SEC championship game with 2 losses that could win the conference. And I don't know, unless things become quite chaotic in all the other conferences, that an 11-2 LSU team would have much of a shot at being selected.
Okay, so do you think?
So that's one way, for example.
Okay, do you think there is a more realistic shot at 2 Big Ten teams making the college football playoff, and one of those Big Ten teams making it in over an SEC champion, if the ACC and the Pac-12 have both conference champions? Like, if we'll say those are 2 slots, when it comes down to it, not just regular season losses, when it comes down to it, would you put in a second 1-loss Big Ten team over a SEC 1-loss team? And I know that might sound kind of complicated, but and if you don't want to answer that, that's fine. I'm just kind of curious about what you, like, thus far, what you're kind of thinking if that kind of scenario plays out.
Well, I believe myself in resumes. I think the committee goes a little bit more of a combination of resume and eyeball test. And they seem to lean on a crutch of conference championships when it serves them in their argument. But in the case that you bring up, let's say, so you're talking about a one-loss SEC champion against a one-loss team out of the Big Ten that did not go to the championship game. So, for example, Penn State's 11-1 and Georgia's 12-1 and the SEC champion.
Yes. I'm essentially saying a one-loss SEC champion versus a one-loss Big Ten team.
Yes.
That didn't make it to the championship game, but may have beaten.
Sure.
You kind of get where I'm going here.
So the reason I'm putting actual teams in the slots is because they don't all have the same resume. So
yes, I get that.
Big Ten team, insert SEC team, and it changes depending on the teams. Ohio State's the only team that has a Notre Dame type non-conference game out of the three big teams in the Big Ten. So in that scenario, think about this. Penn State's already lost a game, so we know what their loss looks like. They lost to Ohio State today. However you want to rate that loss, I consider it to be.
They didn't score a touchdown.
Yeah, they didn't score a touchdown until it was garbage time.
That's a bad loss.
It's a pretty bad loss. Unless Ohio State goes 13-0 and runs through everyone the rest of the season. That depends. And if Penn State rebounds, so under our scenario, Penn State would have defeated Michigan, which is obviously going to be a much better win than anything Georgia has.
Wait, I'm sorry, I'm not following there. Penn State.
We were comparing Penn State. I thought we were going Penn State versus Georgia.
So are you Penn State versus Georgia? Where I'm sorry, where were you?
We were comparing, I thought we were comparing Georgia as a one-loss SEC champion against Penn State as a one-loss team.
So you're assuming Penn State, okay, so Georgia loses in the SEC championship. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. You're the one with the scenarios. You give me the scenario.
Okay, well,
otherwise I'm just making one up. Because you were coming up with a generic scenario of a Big Ten team with one loss and an SEC champion with one loss. I was simply giving it more definition so we could.
No, that's okay. That's okay. We'll go ahead and we'll follow with what you were going. Okay, so Penn State versus Georgia. So where were you going from there?
Well, where I was going is that Penn State's going to have both a better win and a better loss than Georgia under that scenario. They will have beaten Michigan. They will have lost to Ohio State on the road.
Yeah.
And Georgia is going to have to lose to somebody on their schedule. And they have nobody left that's really that good on the schedule unless they lose the SEC championship game, in which they are going to have to lose to a two-loss team to be the one that's going to be considered out of the SEC. But I still think that there is a bias with the committee, with any committee, that is going to favor a Georgia in particular because they've won the national championship the last 2 years.
So you think there's an SEC bias with the playoff committee?
Yes. And it's somewhat earned. Well, it is
earned.
It's
really?
not.
Is that by recruiting rankings or what?
No.
By wins or?
No, let me clarify. It's not earned this particular season, meaning the SEC has done nothing this season to earn any favor from the committee, in my eyes. They don't have a good non-conference record. They've not won the most important matchups out of conference. They haven't earned it this year. But if you believe in this, they've earned it over past seasons. Now, I don't believe that that should play into it, but I guarantee that it does to some extent.
So
Their-
there's
their
no
history.
so there's no repercussion. So there's bias. So there's
Well, of
like-
course, there's bias. There's people voting on 4 playoff teams.
okay, so people don't care about a true champion. Is that what's going on? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I believe that the committee does its best to be unbiased, but they're human beings and they're selecting playoff teams. So they
But that's still a factor. though.
and the reason they have 13 people is to try to mitigate the bias by having 13 different biased people.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. Well, yeah. Let me ask you this. Between the ACC and the Pac-12, who is more likely to miss out on the final playoff rankings based on what we know so far?
If their records are the same, the ACC, because the Pac-12 is a better conference.
Even if Florida State goes undefeated?
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. If they have the same record.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, I appreciate the conversation, Mark. I won't take up any more of your time.
Thanks,
for
Nick.
taking,
Appreciate you being here. Have a
yeah.
good night.
Thanks. Bye.
All right. And we got Sean chiming in tonight. Sean, how you doing?
Great day to be a Buckeye, Mark.
I'm with you.
Yeah, it was that was an old fashioned sort of grinding. It reminds me of some of the Tressel years where the final margin of victory wasn't real high, but the game dominance seemed quite high.
So
Man.
while it was a grinding game in a sense, Ohio State threw for 300 yards.
Yeah. But it was a very workman-like 300 yards through the air, right? I mean, they weren't just like throwing 50-yard BBs.
They completed 22 passes for 286. That's a pretty good chunk per. That's a good 14 yards per completion.
Yeah, but I mean, it wasn't. I mean, they weren't going on like 2-minute drives where they just darted Penn State.
No,
they put up 20 points. And I mean, they could have had 300 yards passing or rushing. It's still kind of the same, kind of in the way you do it, in the manner. Sorry, my kitty's grabbing a hold of my laptop there, but I mean, it was. I would say it was just. It reminded me of those games back in the aughts where it's like, okay, they won by 8, they won by 10. It doesn't look like they dominated, but they kind of did through the game. I never felt threatened. Felt like they were really threatened at any point in this game.
I would generally agree. Although with that talented of a team on the other side and only being up by 1 score, I could process that mentally, but I know what you mean emotionally. It didn't feel like Ohio State didn't have control of from the time. And I've got to check my bias at the door because I never think Ohio State's going to lose any game. I don't turn the TV on thinking they're going to lose the game.
No, I mean, I think the one time I did was when they played Alabama in the national championship game.
Yeah,
the COVID year. Like I went into that game thinking we're not suited for this, and they really weren't.
Yeah, and those were extreme conditions,
right?
And the Georgia game last year.
Mhm.
I was just curious to see
I was
whether
pretty close on that too. I honestly
just-
was yeah.
I
not-
was just curious to see whether Ohio State had its heads screwed on straight and if they were still sulking and felt underconfident, beat up after Michigan, then I could have seen them losing by 3 or 4 touchdowns. But once the game started and I saw a couple drives, then I
Mhm.
was confident that they were going to win the game.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you saw that they were fully engaged.
Yeah.
And you knew that they could compete at
Yeah.
at their highest level. Yeah, but it's quite interesting, the reversal from the past couple years where this team was all offense. We felt like if we didn't score 45, we might be in trouble. Like that was always an issue. And now, 20, and we win very comfortable against a very good team, a top 10 team, and we win very comfortably. It's just not, I mean, have you seen teams like this almost ever, like almost flip their identity over the course of one season?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
That is a great question. I don't think that I can come up with one at this level. I think it happens in the lower ranks of college football, but for an elite.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, Oklahoma did it over the course of a couple years back in the early Bob Stoops days. They won a national championship in 2000 as just this lockdown #1 defense in the nation. Pitched a shutout in the BCS championship game.
Well, they gave up 2 points, right?
Well, the offense gave up the 2 points. Their
2 points,
defense
yeah.
pitched a shutout.
Mhm.
And within 2 or 3 years, it's Jason White throwing 40 touchdowns, and the defense is pretty marginal. And they turned into that pretty quickly. But from one season to the next, although the Ohio State transition wouldn't be nearly as drastic as that was.
No, I mean, yeah, especially a decade later, they were giving up 35 and winning 11 games a year. It was, I mean, but yeah, I consider, I thought of this the whole year as a 3-game season, and I guess we're 2-0 now. And the way I look at it, the other games, the 4 games,
I wouldn't look past next Saturday night.
Well, I'll probably be there, and I hope not, because I'll probably be in Madison. I know people there, so I will. Yeah, likely be in Camp Randall for that game. So that but it will be my birthday too. I'll be celebrating my 21st birthday for like the umpteenth year.
There you go.
And but no, I mean we've seen that quite a bit. I mean tonight, perfect example, just finished it a couple minutes ago. I mean we've seen a lot of teams perform poorly off of hangovers this season, including a couple today. I mean Oregon took a while to get going against Wazoo, and Washington, I don't know what that was tonight. That was not the team I've watched for the first 6-7 weeks tonight. So, I mean, Wisconsin doesn't look good, but that's always a brutal place to go to. It's always a tough place to play.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I did want to touch on something. Alabama, I don't know really what to make of them right now. I don't think they're very good, but I think it seems like this may be one of Saban's more underrated coaching jobs, because I can't think of anything this team does really well at all. And they just kind of find ways to win these games.
Yeah, I get your point. I think they're going to play in the national championship game myself, but I think they're buttoned up on defense and have a strong running game and a quarterback who's dynamic, who's getting better by the week.
And they haven't put a complete. I haven't seen them outside of maybe the Ole Miss, which I didn't watch at all. I haven't seen a second of that game. But outside of that game, it doesn't look like they've put a complete game together at any point this season.
No, neither is Georgia.
I mean, they're just haphazard all over the place. I mean, if I was a Bama fan, I would gulp every time Milroe drops back because you don't know if it's going to be great or if it's going to break your back at some point. But I don't know, like somehow they're just getting it done right now. And I could see them getting it done through the rest of the regular season schedule. I mean, the SEC West is kind of it seems really, really flat to me, and like everything's a notch down from where it's been the past couple years. Every team is like a step or two lower than they've been at their best.
Yeah, it's down, no doubt.
Yeah. All right. So all I have for you tonight, Mark. Go Bucks.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate you being here. All right. Moose, I saw a couple comments in the chat I wanted to address. Mike, thanks for the super chat. We'll get to it in just a second. So Moose says here, SEC needs more help than the Big Ten. Your conference is down this year. All right. I get your point. The SEC is down this year, or we think it is. We think it is. We'll see in the postseason. But at the same time, we got to understand something. The Big Ten has defeated who? Notre Dame. Thank you. Somebody came up with it. The Big Ten, for anyone who goes to bat for the Big Ten as a conference, can thank Ohio State by a half a yard. That is the only win that the conference can point to say this is a good win. Our buddy Corey Brada on the Iowa channel, we do our show. He would argue that Iowa State is a good win. It's not a good win. It's a decent win. It's an okay win. It's a win that Iowa should deliver. They did, barely, not by a lot. West Virginia is not a good win. It's okay, but Penn State should beat West Virginia by 23 points. And they only had a 16-point lead when they scored the last touchdown on the last play of the game. Maryland didn't beat anyone. Michigan hasn't beaten anyone. Northwestern didn't beat anyone outside the conference. Nebraska, no. Minnesota lost to North Carolina by 18 points. Wisconsin lost their out-of-conference game to Washington State. Rutgers beat Virginia Tech. Purdue beat Virginia Tech. So we have no proof that the Big Ten's really... I know that the three teams at the top of the league are good. I just know that based on my observation of the games and because Ohio State went out and beat Notre Dame and because we know how talented they are, but nothing's been proven on the field. The best wins in the country, non-conference, are Texas going to Alabama and winning by 2 scores. Ohio State going to Notre Dame. Notre Dame, by the way, actually going to Duke and winning that game. That's one of the best wins in the country out of conference. LSU, a win for Florida State. There's really about 6 or 7 wins nationally outside of conference play that are really strong wins. So the only reason it appears that the SEC is down and the Big Ten is not down is that the SEC actually played those kind of games. They went out and played Florida State and Miami and Texas and lost a few of those games. And I will pick up these super chats in just a second. I've lost track of the other comment I wanted to hit. So John makes a good point here. LSU was a defensive team before 2019. Then 2019 happened. Joe Burrow. Yes and no. They were more of a balanced team the year before. I don't know if they were a defensive team, but yes, they transformed considerably. Joe Burrow did throw for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns in the bowl game the year before. So they did have that capability. All right, Mike 3883 playoff scenario. Number 1 Big Ten champion, number 2 Texas, number 3 Washington, Oregon, Pac-12 champion, number 4 Florida State, 1-loss ACC champion, 5 Oklahoma split with Texas, 6 Bama, 2-loss SEC champion, 7 1-loss Big Ten East team, 8 Georgia, 2 losses. Oh, that is the playoff scenario that you are predicting. All right. Okay. That seems fair, reasonable. It can happen. Sure. Yeah. Yes. So you're not predicting a Big Ten champion or a Pac-12 champion. All right. And everyone is moving Florida State in as the ACC champion. That may not be as easy as we believe it is. All right. We also have Mike 3883. Appreciate you being here. It's not about the Big Ten wins. It's about the SEC losses. Yes, the SEC actually went out and scheduled good teams and they lost the games. You're right. The SEC being down is based on scheduling difficult games and losing them, where the Big Ten did not schedule difficult games. One team scheduled a difficult game. Well, throw Minnesota in there. 2 teams in the Big Ten scheduled difficult games. Yeah, going out to Washington State for Wisconsin. Sure, they lost the game. Washington State, they're a top 50 team, 40, 50 team. So the Big Ten, they scheduled 2 games. Notre Dame, North Carolina. I can't think of any other difficult games. That's it for the entire conference. That's pathetic. I don't have enough energy at 2:30 in the morning, since I've been at this for like 15 hours, to really throw a fit, pound my fist, turn this table over. But just the pathetic scheduling in college football. The Big Ten with 14 teams should not be scheduling North Carolina and Notre Dame, and that's it. That's pathetic. It's pathetic of the Big Ten to be scheduling like that with 3 times 14, 52 non-conference games. And the best they can do is Notre Dame and North Carolina and nobody else. Who's the 3rd best team that the Big Ten played non-conference play? Iowa State, Colorado. Okay, Washington. Washington would be another one. So they got skull dragged in that game. The SEC, you've got Arizona, BYU, in addition to LSU, Texas, Utah. So, yeah, I'm not going to do the whole scheduling thing tonight because it's just beyond me. We've dealt with scheduling many times and will in the future. All right. If there's anything that you would like for me to address on this fine college football weekend, I will. But you can be sure that on Sunday there will be a top 25 that actually makes sense. We will preview the games coming up this week, which I find it very interesting that when I post preview videos, we did Oklahoma, UCF, Alabama, Tennessee, Michigan, Michigan State, Florida State, Duke. When I post those videos with contributors that we have on, like nobody watches them. Just the view total is just a complete waste of time. Like nobody watches them. I think they're good videos. They're good preview videos. Nobody watches them. Nobody watches them. But I do instant analysis videos on Saturday, and they get anywhere from 2 to 15,000 views, which leads me to believe that I should be doing these preview videos by myself and not be spending the time going out, reaching out to media people to bring on to talk about their particular teams, to do all the editing, everything. I will preview the Florida State Duke game. I'll preview the Oklahoma UCF game. And it just appears based on your response that more people will watch those videos. Guess we'll try that. All right. We will do a bottom 10 as well. I enjoy those videos. And then maybe some kind of, I don't know if you guys would appreciate this, but I see all sorts of interesting facts and trends and stats that come out every weekend. And I would produce a video on that. I don't know if you guys would get into that. All right. We've got the Big Ten live show coming up Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern time. That's most likely the next time you will see me live. And hopefully my voice will recover by then. And the College Football After Dark show is coming up Sunday night, 10 Eastern. So lock it in on that one. Brian says, put Ohio State number 1. They very well may be. All right. Bilal says, Mark, please list all of the offenses Michigan has played so far. How high are they ranked? So I'm going to do a video on that. I should probably post an Ohio State and Michigan video every day. Just do that automatically. Come up with something to talk about. All right, Uncle Rico, the point that I was making, not about the intention of the scheduling, but it was about how good the teams are now. All right, everyone. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Please do all those good things. Like, subscribe. About 70% of the people that watch videos and watch the live streams are not subscribed. So please subscribe to the channel, and we will see you soon.